What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Jesse called the Collecting Nerd, and today I'm coming at you with the first album review I've done in a while. Today I will be reviewing Louder Than Love by Soundgarden, which is their second album in their discography, but it's the first one they've done on a major label when A&M Records released it on September 5th, 1989. Now, the band at the time consisted of Chris Cornell on vocals and rhythm guitars, Hiro Yamamoto on bass, who have left the band after the release of this album, Kim Theo on lead guitars, and Matt Cameron on drums. Just like my previous album reviews, I'll be discussing the individual songs before reviewing the album as a whole. First song on side one is Ugly Truth. It's an opener that's pretty heavy and bleak at the same time from a sonically and a lyrical standpoint. I personally prefer the subtle, watery vocal effects that go hand in hand with the guitar tones and the lyrics, which feel like to me are about turning a blind eye to the people living a fake life, and the guilt of not really saying anything about it. I feel like everything in the song went together, and despite it clocking in at almost 6 minutes, the song felt shorter due to the pacing of all the instruments as well as the vocals, and for that it gets a 9 out of 10 rating. Up next we have Hands All Over, which is a pretty solid anthem for the early stages of what was to be known as the grunge movement. While creating a jam similar to what Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin would have done in the 70s, I feel like it's a good follow-up track to Ugly Truth, and it would have made a great single, and for that it gets a 7 out of 10. The third track on this album is Gun, and it starts off with a slow, doomy riff that picks up in speed and intensity with each verse before Kim Theo gives a kick-ass guitar solo. The track comes with the track closes with the riff that opens the song as well as the very last line of it, and so far it's my favorite on this album. It's one I can headbang to almost all day, and it's paced so well that just like Ugly Truth, it feels like it's shorter than it actually is, and it gets a 10 out of 10 in my book. Up next we have Power Trip. I'm going to start off by saying I love the intro. The combination between the opening licks and Chris Cornell's siren-like wails truly sets the mood for this track. Lyrically, it's pretty much the capitalist wet dream if you ask me, even referring to being above the Pope since he had more money and more power than him. But whether or not you like Soundgarden or don't know him, I still think it's a good track to listen to, and it gets a 10 out of 10 in my rating scale. The second to last track is Get On the Snake, which is an underrated hard rock jam that, just like Hands All Over, it really does feel like a blast from the past. It's another one of those songs where you can listen to no matter what you're doing, and whether you're either listening to the track individually or listening to the album in full. It's still a standout song from Soundgarden's catalog, and it gets an 8 out of 10. The last song for side one is Full On Kevin's Mom, another really catchy song you can just headbang or vibe to because of how enjoyable it is. The song itself is based on a true story about a friend of Chris Cornell's who slept with the mom of a mutual friend, Kevin, whose exact quotes were, "Full on Kevin's mom," in response to that incident. And it goes to show that really having sex with someone's mom can lead to good music, especially if it's based on a true story. So, go start fucking mothers out there, kids. Now, side 2 opens up with Loud Love, which I'm going to assume is the title track since it doesn't really have a title track on this album. It provides a smooth break from the energetic whirlwind, as heard on side 1, in a way that doesn't feel like a total dud. It's one of those songs you feel like would never end, but in a good way, feeling actually a little bit too short despite it in at clocking 5 minutes, and it gets a 7 out of 10 in my book. I Awake is the next song on this album. It comes in at a slow pace, but yet relaxed vibe, as heard on Loud Love. It feels a little bit haunting and doom-like in every aspect of the song, from the chilling opening riff to the lyrics of the song, as because they're dark and a bit relatable, and the bass drives off to the end of the song, beginning at the latter half. Now, even though the lyrics are good, I just don't really care for how they're repetitive. In this song, Chris Cornell ends up repeating the first verse and using it as his second verse. And if you ask me, I think that's just a little bit lazy of a handwriting. And I'm not really a huge fan of when artists do that. So it's just meh. So for that, it kind of gets a 6 out of 10 because it's not one I'm going to listen to all the time, but rather once in a blue moon if I'm bored or I just feel like listening to something I haven't heard in a long time. So it gets a 6 out of 10. Up next, we have No Wrong, No Right, and it continues the dark, moody overtones that are projected on side 2 so far, and it feels like a stark contrast compared to side 1. Lyrically, to me, the song feels like how it's about a society and its morals are on man-made, how a sense of right and wrong is man-made, and how in nature and the animal kingdom it doesn't really give a fuck about, you know, what's going on as long as the strong survive and the weak perish. So it gets a 7 out of 10. Uncovered is the track that was able to recapture some of the energy that is heard on side 1. I can see myself vibing to Uncovered while riding my bike or cleaning my apartment, pretty much just doing anything. The lyrics aren't as bleak as some of the other songs on here, but it does tie into some of the themes that Ugly Truth has, such as exposing one's secrets and, you know, just living a fake life in general. So it does get a 7 out of 10, much like the other songs on here. The second to last song is Big Dumb Sex, and it has replaced Gun as my favorite song on this album from a lyrical standpoint and how it sounds. From a lyrical standpoint, I do get why it wasn't released as a single because of some of the vulgarities, but it's still an underrated song that any Soundgarden fan like just shouldn't gloss over. If you think about it, with the exception of Full On Kevin's Mom, this song as a whole is just a contrast to the dark and moody, downtrodden songs on the rest of the album. And it gets a 10 out of 10. Now, the last song on here is the reprise to Full On. Now, I don't really like this song because it's just filler in my opinion, and not because of the fact that it's a reprise. There are some good examples of reprises out there, but I just don't really feel like it's that good of a song as a whole. It's just an instrumental. It doesn't even sound like Full On Kevin's Mom, but I just wasn't sure if they either needed an extra song to fill in the gap, or they're just trying to get some a little bit extra in to make it seem more even, or they just needed an extra song to make the track listing even for both sides. But either way, I personally feel like they could have done better than just this. Like, you can listen to it if you want, but I personally think it's trash, and it gets a 4 out of 10 in my book. So, overall, I'm giving this album an 8 out of 10. Louder Than Love by Soundgarden is an album that has both its good moments and bad, but the good outweighs the bad by a long shot. This album doesn't really get talked about in the same light as Super Unknown and Bad Motorfinger, even though it's one of the better albums they've made, especially if you know some of the stuff they've done since they reunited, which feels like flatter than a plate full of piss. They were able to gain mainstream with those albums like Super Unknown and Bad Motorfinger as part of the grunge scene, as they were released around the same time as Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Pearl Jam got really big. So it was pretty much the first wave of grunge before Kurt Cobain died and bands like Candlebox and Stone Temple Pilots took over from there. But I still think it's a solid album that you should listen to. I might be reviewing other grunge albums in the near future. I haven't made up that decision yet. If anything, it's going to be focused on more of a heavy album. But if you like this video, if you're either a fan of the album or looking for discovering something, just let me know in the comment section down below. Make sure to share them shits, because other than my word of mouth, and no, I ain't talking about giving head either, but yeah, other than word of mouth, it's pretty much on you guys to fucking get this channel up and running. So any support, the more the better. And happy 420. Feel free to smoke a joint, and I'll see you guys next time.